Hola, muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes, buenas noches, sea lo que sea la hora. Bienvenidos a otra lección de gramática de español. Hoy día nosotros exploramos ser o estar. They both mean to be, but we have two different verbs to express this in Spanish, and let's begin unpacking all of this information. Let's start with what we do know. We know es and está, and of course, our TPR or action that we associate with each is es, right? It is what it is, es, and está, right? A location, right? So es, and está. And these are the third person singular conjugations of the verb, both meaning is, right? But let's take a moment to look at the other conjugations. Here we go. Ser, we have soy, eres, es, somos, sois, and son, okay? And I don't have my guitar with me or my ukulele, but we'll just kind of do it to the snap, like soy, eres, es, somos, sois, son. Try it with me again, like soy, eres, es, somos, sois, son. Okay, very nice. And with estar, we have estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. Make sure you know what the order of those conjugations are and the pronouns that go with them, right? Like the yo, tú, él, ella, etc. Keep in mind that these bottom conjugations, this is also how you would say it, like it is or they are, if you're talking about impersonal subjects, like a store or the mountains, like non-human, right? For example, la clase de español es interesante, or las montañas son bonitas. And the same goes for these verbs, right? You can also use these according to non-human entities, right? Like, so an example for each would be like, está bien, it's okay, right? It's like, it's okay. You're not talking about anyone. It's like, you're saying that the situation is okay. It's okay. Está bien. You know, like, where are the books, right? ¿Dónde están los libros? Oh, están ahí. They're over there. So the question is always like, you know, when do I use ser and when do I use estar? What's the difference between them if they both mean to be, right? Or they both mean like I am, you are, it is, etc. So the first thing I'm going to teach you here is the main difference, like the most general difference between them. Ser is usually used to talk about things that are more permanent in nature, right? Like when you characterize, when you're characterizing a person, a place, or a thing, you're usually going to go with ser, the more permanent version of to be. So my three very simple examples would be like, soy rubio, right? I'm blonde. Asking a person, ¿eres alta? Or ¿eres alto? Are you tall? Or it says something is interesting. Es interesante. These are more characterizations or things that are more permanent in nature. But Mr. Wessel, what if I dyed my hair from blonde to brunette? That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? You are going to go with what your natural hair color in this case would be. So a couple of examples with estar, right? Estoy enfermo. I'm sick, right? Or estoy enferma if you're female. Oh, hola. ¿Estás aquí? Are you here? Está bien. Right? It's all good. Está bien or no está bien. It's not good. Notice here that we have temporary states. It can be how you feel or where you are in a given moment, right? So like being sick, being tired, things like that. They're temporary, right? They're subject to change over time. So we use estar. Now, there are exceptions to these rules. There are times where it might feel like you'd use one, but you actually need the other. Here are a couple of examples. So time is one of those examples where you think, I would use estar, right? Because time is always changing. It's never set on one thing. But in this case, you're going to use ser. So maybe think of like the passage of time. That is something that is permanent. You can't freeze time or fast forward time. This isn't Back to the Future, right? So you would use ser for time, as in the question, what time is it? ¿Qué hora es? And some examples, right? If it's 1 o'clock, either in the morning or the afternoon, you're going to say, es la una. Yeah, try that. Es la una. Or with 1:30, es la 1:30. But everything after 1 o'clock, you're going to go from es to son, right? As in, son las 2:15. It's 2:15. Like it's 2 1/4, right? Son las 2:15. When you're asking about general age, so not necessarily like how old someone is like in years, but like just the general like old or young, we're actually going to use ser here as opposed to estar, right? Many people would think, I'd use estar because over time that would change. We're not permanently young or old, right? But this is an exception to the rule. You're going to use the verb ser to ask about and describe general age, like old and young, right? So old, viejo or vieja, and young, joven, as in, eres viejo o joven. For example, yo soy joven. Okay, bueno, yo soy viejo para ustedes, pero bueno, yo soy joven. Notice how when we take this adjective that ends with an N, to say like they're young, right? We have to add es. A little side note there, as in son jóvenes. All right, what about food? Because when you're talking about food, often you'll characterize the food, right? So you think you would use ser, and sometimes you would, right? So if you're talking about like tacos, like are you into Chipotle or Qdoba tacos, right? You'd maybe say like, bueno, a mí me encantan los tacos de Qdoba. Los tacos de Qdoba son ricos. You're characterizing the tacos from Qdoba as being delicious. However, remember that food can go bad over time, so it can also be that kind of temporary thing. So in the case of food, it can go ser or estar. Take, for example, my rotten apple here. It's kind of a bad drawing, but anyways, it says here, la manzana está mal, which is like, the apple is bad, or the apple's rotten. It's gone bad, right? La manzana está mal. So there are a couple of mnemonic strategies, ways to help you remember like the difference. When do I use one over the other? This one is a little bit more simple in nature. It's called stop the elf, all right? So ser is used for time, occupation or origin, as in like my occupation. Yo soy profesor de español. Or my origin, right, where I'm from. Yo soy de Denver. And then finally, the P means like your personality or appearance. I'll give a couple of examples. Yo soy muy sociable. I'm a sociable person or social person. Or my appearance, right? Yo soy alto. Now, estar, we keep the two things. Location, as in, ¿dónde está la leche? Where is the milk? Where's the location of the milk? La leche está en la refrigeradora, por ejemplo. Or feelings, right? These can be emotional feelings, like, estoy feliz, estoy triste, estoy enojado. For example, other visceral, like having to do with like your bodily states. We would go with estar for that. Okay, in this next phrase mnemonic, it's a little bit more detailed. Doctor, place, okay? So this is what each one means. Date, for example, hoy es el 4 de noviembre. Occupation, for example, él es abogado. He is a lawyer. Characteristics, we've seen that before. Time, which goes with date, right? For example, ahora son las 11 de la mañana. Origin, we just saw this earlier, where you're from. Or relation or relationship, for example, Rihanna es mi esposa. Rihanna is my wife. Now, place. So, like the position of something, right? So, like, está al revés. It's backwards. Está al revés. Location, we've seen that already. Okay, action. A quick side note. This is when we would combine estar with a gerund or like an ing verb. So for example, in this very moment, I am talking to you. That's the action I am doing, right? So in Spanish, that would be estoy hablando. Estoy hablando. So that ando, which we saw in class, last class in person, we looked at mirando, which is like looking. So I could also be like, I'm looking. Estoy mirando. I'm looking. Or estoy hablando. Estoy saltando. I'm jumping. Estoy saltando. So anything where you combine estar with that ing in Spanish, which would be ando, or with ir verbs yendo. Estoy escribiendo, right? I am writing. Y tú estás escribiendo también. Are you writing your notes? Your condition, right? So like your health condition, your emotional condition, very much like feelings in Stop the Elf. And finally, emotion. For example, estoy muy feliz que esta lección se ha terminado. I'm happy that this lesson has come to an end. So that is your rundown of ser or estar. Now go ahead and try some of the practice activities that ensue. Good luck y adiós. Gracias.